Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating journey. We're asking this profound question. What if some of history's biggest, most pivotal shifts, maybe even the explosive ones, were influenced by something, well, far beyond our control?
Like unseen influencers, cosmic forces shaping events.
Exactly. We're talking about those celestial alignments, things that seem to coincide, these huge transformations in society.
It's a big thought.
It is. And we've really dug into a lot of sources here, articles, historical accounts, research papers. Our mission for this deep dive is to pull out the most important nuggets, the key insights.
To give you a shortcut, basically.
Yeah, a shortcut to understanding this compelling historical pattern. And maybe, just maybe, a pattern that could be predictive.
It's definitely a different lens to view history through, isn't it? The idea that these, grand cosmic dances could actually be marking epochs of huge change right here on Earth.
Gives you a deeper context, maybe, for why some periods feel so turbulent.
Right. And today, we're zeroing in on a very specific one, a really significant cosmic event.
Which is?
The conjunction of Saturn and Neptune.
Okay.
And even more specifically, what tends to happen when this powerful alignment occurs in the astrological sign of Aries, the fiery one.
Right, Aries. So our goal here, our mission, is to explore that historical pattern, Saturn-Neptune conjunctions in Aries, and how they seem to correlate, startlingly sometimes, with these periods of really intense religious and ideological conflict.
It's not just random dates. You're saying the sources show a connection.
That's what the sources suggest, yeah. And we promise we'll try to connect these, ancient observations about the planets to some very modern, very pressing questions. We'll dig into some surprising facts, hopefully keep it engaging.
It's about seeing those underlying currents, not just looking at events in isolation.
Exactly.
When you look at these long cycles, these patterns, they really do start to emerge. It gives you a kind of framework for understanding not just what happened, but maybe digging into why society shifted in certain ways.
Okay, so let's give everyone a first glimpse then. Just how impactful can this alignment be? Let's go back, way back, to the 1522 conjunction in Aries.
A key example.
A key one, yeah. The historical accounts we looked at, they describe what followed as, and this is a quote, one of the most explosive eras of religious conflict in European history.
Wow. Explosive.
I mean, think about that. What started out as, theological debate, scholars arguing.
Intellectual sparring, maybe. Clerics debating points of doctrine.
Right. That transformed and rapidly into actual armed struggle. It fundamentally altered the whole collective belief system of the time.
Forever.
A complete reshaping.
We're going to unpack that 1522 case study in detail, and then maybe the most compelling part, see how these patterns just might, inform our view of the present, and maybe even the future.
Okay, let's try and decode this cosmic blueprint then. Starting with the planets themselves, Saturn and Neptune. When they come together, you said.
Well, the sources consistently point to history taking a turn towards these really significant questions.
Not just minor things.
No, profound inquiries. Things centered on faith, on authority, on the collective ideals that, hold societies together.
So what do these two planets actually represent symbolically in this context?
Okay, so Saturn. Astrologically speaking, Saturn is often linked with structure.
Structure, oh, right.
Established authority. The cold, hard realities of the world, you could say. Boundaries, rules that govern us.
Like the system.
Exactly. Think of it as the cosmic architect, maybe. Or the great disciplinarian. It's the concrete stuff, the manifest, the systems we build, governments, laws, traditional institutions.
So consolidation, maybe?
But also limits.
Yes, consolidation, but also limitation. And sometimes restriction, even fear is associated with it. It's about what's fixed, established, what holds things together.
Got it. Saturn. Structure, reality, limits. What about Neptune? Sounds different.
Oh, very different. Neptune embodies ideals, beliefs, spirituality, that yearning for something beyond the mundane, something transcendent.
Abstract. Much more. It's the realm of the collective unconscious, you could say. Dreams, universal empathy, often what lies beyond our immediate tangible reality.
Okay.
But, and this is key, it also carries themes of dissolution, illusion, sometimes even collective delusion.
Dissolution.
Yeah.
Like things breaking down.
Exactly. Breaking down boundaries, dissolving structures. So Neptune represents the boundless, the inspirational, but also the nebulous, the uncertain, the eroding force.
Wow. Okay, so you've got Saturn, who sounds like, I don't know, the cosmic accountant.
Right.
Very meticulous, rigid.
Uh-huh.
And then Neptune, the dreamer, who wants to dissolve all the boundaries and explore the intangible.
That's a good way to put it.
So when these incredibly powerful planetary energies converge, what happens? It sounds like it must be a profound blending or maybe more of a clash.
Often a clash, yes, or at least intense tension. It's like that immovable object of tradition and power, Saturn, meeting this irresistible force of evolving spirituality or new ideals, Neptune.
An immovable object meets an irresistible force.
Exactly. Their conjunctions tend to highlight periods where the very foundations of what a society believes, its collective myths, its spiritual underpinnings, its whole ideological bedrock, and the authority that upholds all that.
The Saturn part.
Right, the Saturn part, are brought into really intense focus. They get challenged, sometimes dissolved, often radically reshaped.
So it's like a societal reevaluation.
A collective reevaluation, precisely. The structures that once provided meaning and order, the Saturnian ones, they encounter these collective aspirations or spiritual yearnings or maybe just disillusionment. That's the Neptune influence.
And the tension forces a breakdown.
Often, yes. It forces some kind of breakdown, which then clears the ground, for new structures or new belief systems to eventually emerge.
Okay, that makes sense. But then we add Aries to the mix. This isn't just any Saturn-Neptune conjunction we're focusing on initially. It's specifically in Aries, first sign of the zodiac.
Right.
What does that bring to the table when we're talking about these big themes of faith and authority?
Well, Aries is pure energy. It's the cardinal fire sign.
Fire, okay.
It's the initiator, the pioneer, the trailblazer. It's all about new beginnings, courage, assorting identity.
Sounds proactive.
Very. But that primal fiery energy also lends itself to confrontation, to aggression, and, well, historically, often to war.
The warrior archetype.
Exactly. Aries is the archetype of the warrior, eager to charge forward, establish something new, or defend its territory with absolute conviction. Aries doesn't really wait around, it acts.
Okay, so let's put it together. You have Saturn, the heavyweight of established structure, authority, meeting Neptune, the force of ideals, maybe dissolution.
Right.
And this meeting happens in Aries, the sign of, you said, aggressive new beginnings, confrontation.
Yes.
That sounds like, well, a recipe for something pretty potent, maybe explosive, like that quote said.
It really does seem to create a very volatile mix.
Do the sources ever talk about whether Aries, focuses the Neptune energy, or maybe makes Saturn even more rigid, leading to a more defined conflict instead of just, a vague feeling of change?
That's a really sharp question. And yes, absolutely. The sources definitely highlight Aries' role here. It acts as a catalyst, an amplifier, and yes, a definer of the conflict.
How so?
Aries' cardinal, fiery nature, it's like a crucible. It doesn't really do ambiguity well.
It forces things out into the open.
Exactly. So while Neptune on its own might bring dissolution in a more passive way, like erosion over time, in Aries, that dissolving energy often manifests as a forceful breakdown of old forms, a shattering almost to make way for the new.
And Saturn.
Saturn's structure, instead of just standing firm or adapting slowly, can become aggressively defensive of its boundaries in Aries.
Wow, digging in its heels.
Digging in its heels and ready to fight. Which leads right back to that battle for new beginnings idea we saw in 1522. Aries brings that take action now or fight for what you believe in energy right into the heart of the Saturn-Neptune dynamic.
Transforming potential tension into overt conflict.
Precisely. And as we mentioned, the last time we had this specific combination, Saturn-Neptune in Aries, was that pivotal year, 1522.
It really sets the stage, doesn't it? How these cosmic energies might actually play out in history. Okay, let's dive right into that historical case study then. 1522. Because the sources really hammer this home as a defining moment for this whole pattern.
It's a perfect storm in many ways.
To really get the explosive aftermath, we need to paint the picture of Europe just before then. It was already simmering, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Europe in the early 16th century was on the cusp of seismic change. The Reformation wasn't yet in full swing, but it was definitely rumbling.
The old structures were under pressure.
Immense pressure. Think about it. The Catholic Church had been the undisputed spiritual and often temporal authority for, over 1,000 years?
Wow, dominant.
Totally dominant. Its doctrines, its hierarchy, its rituals, they were the bedrock of European society.
Yeah.
But discontent was definitely brewing.
Why? What was driving it?
A few things. Perceived corruption within the church hierarchy was a big one. Theological rigidities that left a lot of people feeling, spiritually unfulfilled. And you also had this growing intellectual movement, Renaissance humanism, encouraging critical thinking.
And right in the middle of this, Martin Luther.
Martin Luther. His role is just pivotal. You can't overstate it. He wasn't just another theologian arguing points. He was a catalyst, a profound catalyst for this collective reevaluation.
And that moment at the Diet of Worms, 1521, just the year before the conjunction.
Yeah.
So iconic.
Absolutely iconic. Refusing to recant his writings, standing up to the emperor and the church hierarchy.
Here I stand, I can do no other, or words to that effect.
Right. And the historical accounts we looked at explicitly state that this single act cracked the unity of the Catholic Church.
Just cracked it. A huge impact for one moment. But I wonder, do the sources suggest, was there any thought maybe the crack could be mended? Or was it already too late?
That's a good point. While Luther's act was undeniably the spark, the sources do suggest the ground was already, very fertile for dissent.
Okay.
Decades of issues, papal corruption, those intellectual currents from humanism meant the church's unity was already fragile. Luther's defiance wasn't maybe the sole cause of the crack, but it was like the hammer blow that made it impossible to ignore.
It irrevocably widened an existing fault line.
Exactly. It confirmed for many people that the old order was vulnerable. His actions were a direct public challenge, not just to specific doctrines, but to the whole fabric of the collective belief system and the ultimate authority structure, the Pope, the Emperor, that upheld it.
He was basically saying his conscience, guided by Scripture, was above their decrees.
Precisely. That moment alone signaled that the established Saturnian order was deeply vulnerable. It was a crack, yes, but one that very quickly started to widen into a huge fissure.
Okay, so that's the backdrop. Tension already sky high. Then we hit the conjunction year itself, 1522, and something absolutely game-changing happens.
Yes. Luther completes his translation of the New Testament.
Into German.
German. And this wasn't just, another scholarly project. This was a societal earthquake.
Why was it so revolutionary?
Well, think about it. Before Luther, the Bible was primarily in Latin.
Which most people couldn't read.
Exactly. Only the clergy, really, and a tiny, highly educated elite. The church was the gatekeeper, the sole interpreter, the intermediary between God and the individual.
They controlled the message.
Completely. By translating the New Testament into the vernacular, into common German that ordinary people spoke and understood, Luther basically bypassed centuries of that ecclesiastical control.
Wow.
He empowered individuals.
Why?
Suddenly they could access the religious texts directly, read God's word for themselves, interpret it for themselves.
Instead of relying only on the Latin-speaking clergy?
Right. It fundamentally shattered that existing power dynamic between the believer and the institution. It put unprecedented authority, spiritual agency, into the hands of the common person.
A radical redistribution of spiritual power.
Absolutely.
And the timing.
Yeah.
Happening right at the Saturn Neptune in Aries conjunction. It feels almost, uncanny.
It really does line up remarkably.
And it wasn't just the translation itself, was it? It was the technology.
The printing press. Crucial element.
Still relatively new then, but it allowed Luther's ideas, these reformist ideas, to, as the sources say, spread rapidly all across Europe.
It was the social media of its day, wasn't it? Amplifying his message exponentially.
That really feels like the aha moment, connecting the dots.
Yeah.
You have this cosmic alignment known for challenging belief and authority, happening in Aries, the sign of forceful new beginnings.
Right.
Coinciding exactly with this cultural shift, Luther's translation, and powered by this new technology, the printing press, that could spread it like wildfire.
It's a perfect storm. The conjunction in 1522 lines up precisely with the acceleration of this movement, a movement that would fundamentally redefine faith, authority, and the individual's relationship to both.
So the printing press meant these ideas weren't just stuck in universities or courts.
No, they infiltrated villages, towns, sparked conversations, debates, and dissent everywhere. The sheer volume of pamphlets, sermons, these new vernacular Bibles being printed, it meant Luther's ideas reached numbers previously unimaginable.
Stirring up big questions.
Huge questions about salvation, sin, the legitimacy of the church itself. This convergence, the celestial alignment, the cultural moment, the technology, it created this unstoppable force.
Yeah.
A truly Neptunian wave of new ideas crashing against those old Saturnian structures.
And this is the tragic part the sources emphasize. What started as theological debate, it didn't stay intellectual for long.
No. It quickly became armed struggle.
There wasn't just an intellectual revolution. It spilled over into real-world, brutal, violent conflict.
Yes.
It just makes you pause, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine being a peasant in, say, 1524, your world gets turned upside down. Maybe you felt this spiritual awakening, and suddenly you're on a literal battlefield.
A human cost. The sources really bring that home. It wasn't abstract for the people living through it. It was life and death.
All in the name of belief.
And that's often the tragic escalation, isn't it? When core beliefs collide with established power, especially with that Aries energy adding fuel to the fire. Assertive, combative. People don't just debate their deepest convictions. Often they fight for them.
So the first major eruption of this armed struggle was the German Peasants' War, 1524 to 1525.
A huge event.
The sources say it was fueled partly by reformist rhetoric, and it turned into a massive social uprising. How did that rhetoric ignite such widespread unrest among the peasants?
Well, this war is a really stark example of Neptune's ideals hitting Saturn's structures, amplified by Aries. Now, Luther himself actually condemned the violence, the uprising.
Oh, he did?
Yes, he was horrified by it. But his core message, individual conscience, challenging hierarchy, the equality of all believers before God, that resonated incredibly deeply with grievances the peasantry had held for a long, long time.
Grievances about their social conditions.
Exactly. Serfdom, crushing taxes, feudal obligations. They heard Luther's call for religious reform and interpreted it partly as a divine green light to seek social and economic justice, too.
So it wasn't just a religious war.
No, it was incredibly complex, a volatile mix. Religious fervor provided this powerful ideological justification for deep-seated socioeconomic anger. The scale was enormous, affecting huge parts of the Holy Roman Empire.
Leading to
Widespread death and destruction. Peasant armies clashing violently with the forces of the nobility. The sources paint a really grim picture. Tens of thousands died. A direct violent consequence of that old order breaking down and these new radical ideals being asserted.
And the conflicts didn't end there, did they? After the Peasants' War, then came the Schmalkaldic Wars.
Right. These were different, though.
How so? More elite.
Yes, more overtly political and military, fought directly between the newly emerging Protestant princes, rulers within the Holy Roman Empire who'd embraced Luther's teachings, and the Emperor Charles V, who was staunchly Catholic.
So prince versus emperor.
Essentially, yes. These wars really illustrate the direct clash between these emerging religious identities, territories declaring themselves Lutheran or Catholic, and the established political and religious power structures of the empire.
What were they fighting for?
The Protestant princes formed a defensive alliance, the Schmalkaldic League, to protect their religious freedom, but also their political autonomy. They didn't want the emperor telling them what religion to follow or reasserting strong central control.
So religion and politics were completely intertwined.
Absolutely. It was tearing the Holy Roman Empire apart along these new confessional lines. And these were long, bloody conflicts lasting for years. It shows how deep ideological divides could literally redraw the political map.
And ultimately, all this fighting, this period of intense conflict, it led somewhere specific, a resolution of sorts.
It led to the Peace of Augsburg in 1555, a really crucial moment.
And its significance, our sources say, Lutheranism was finally acknowledged as a legitimate faith.
Which was extraordinary for the time. It was this grudging, Saturnian acceptance of a new Neptunian reality that had been forged in the Aries fire of conflict.
What did it actually do?
For the first time, a major Christian denomination besides Catholicism was given legal recognition within the Holy Roman Empire. It established the principle of cuius regio, ius religio.
Which means?
Whose realm, his religion. Basically, the ruler of a territory got to decide its official religion, Catholic or Lutheran.
So not exactly individual religious freedom.
No, not for individuals. You still had to follow your ruler's religion or you had the right to emigrate. But it was a huge shift. It marked a new, fractured religious landscape for Europe.
A resolution born from conflict.
Definitely born out of decades of brutal war. And it fundamentally changed the map of religious power, really laying the groundwork for future conflicts too. But it was a landmark nonetheless, a redrawing of those lines of authority and belief.
So to sum up that whole period, the 33 years following that 1522 Saturn Neptune and Aries conjunction were, as the sources state, truly dominated by religious wars.
33 years? It's staggering.
Just imagine living through that. Decades of society being fundamentally upheaved, your neighbor potentially becoming your enemy, all driven by these clashes over belief.
It really underscores the long-term profound impact an alignment like this can seem to coincide with, shaking the very foundations of society for generations.
Okay, so we've gotten deep into 1522. It's such a clear, potent example of Saturn Neptune in Aries. But The sources we looked at suggest this isn't just a one-off. It's part of a bigger pattern, right? A recurring theme of redefinition that happens across different Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, even when they're not necessarily in Aries.
That's right. If you zoom out and connect this to the bigger picture, it seems the specifics of the conflict evolve over time, but the underlying dynamic, that seems to persist.
So the early version, as we just covered in detail, was Europe's Catholic-Protestant wars.
Right. The initial religious war phase.
Yeah.
Deeply tied to redefining spiritual authority, individual faith.
But as history moved on, the nature of these collective belief systems being fought over started to broaden.
Significantly broadened, yes. Later conjunctions, the research points towards different kinds of ideological battles emerging.
Like what?
We see a shift from purely religious disputes towards conflicts framed as, say, monarchy versus revolution.
Ah, okay. So the focus shifts.
Exactly. The nature of the collective belief system being redefined expands. It's not just about how you worship anymore, but about how you're governed, who holds legitimate power, the fundamental structure of society itself.
How do the sources describe Saturn and Neptune playing out in those kinds of revolutions, like the French Revolution, for example?
Well, it becomes incredibly clear archetypally in periods like the run-up to the French Revolution. You see Saturn clearly representing the old regime.
Establishment.
The entrenched, rigid structures, absolute monarchy, the aristocracy, the whole feudal system, the belief in the divine right of kings, that's the established Saturnian authority and social order.
And Neptune.
Neptune embodies the revolutionary ideals, surging up liberty, equality, fraternity, the collective yearning for a different, maybe more just society, the utopian visions coming out of the Enlightenment, and also the dissolution of that traditional power.
So it's a direct clash again.
A collision, as the sources describe it, between an old, seemingly immovable order and this irresistible wave of new, powerful, often radical ideals.
And if Aries is involved in the astrology of those times,
then you often see that forceful, aggressive assertion of the new ideals, leading to, well, violent overthrows of monarchies, attempts to establish new republics often unstable at first. The very definition of who holds power and by what right gets fundamentally redefined.
so the collective belief system expands from religious dogma to include political legitimacy, social hierarchy.
Exactly.
And this pattern didn't stop there. It continued into the 20th century.
It did. Our sources point very clearly to the major struggles between capitalism and communism in the 20th century as another manifestation of this dynamic.
Wow. That really brings it into modern times. Economic and political ideologies become the battleground.
They take center stage as the belief systems in contention, yes.
So what was the Saturn-Neptune dynamic there during the Cold War, for instance?
Okay, so during the Cold War, Saturn could be seen as manifesting in the concrete economic structures and established power dynamics of capitalist societies.
Like private property, markets.
Right. Private property, market-driven economies, individual wealth accumulation, and the state apparatus that often protects those systems. That's the Saturnian structure.
And Neptune represents communism.
Neptune represents the ideals often associated with communism, particularly in its theoretical or utopian form. The idea of a classless society, collective ownership, universal equality, the dissolution of exploitation.
These sound like huge, all-encompassing ideologies.
They were, almost like secular religions in a way. Each claimed moral superiority, each sought global influence, if not dominance. The sources really highlight the profound depth of this ideological divide.
Relating to.
Proxy wars, the nuclear arms race, intense cultural battles, propaganda wars. It gripped the entire world for decades.
So the clash redefined what societies believed about economics, justice.
About economic justice, yes. About the role of the state, the individual versus the collective, the fundamental aims of human society. Saturn's pragmatic, often harsh realities clashed with Neptune's grand, sometimes illusory or utopian vision, and often with Aries-like intensity playing out on the global stage, even if not through direct major power conflict.
Okay, so synthesizing all this, it seems clear that each cycle, each major Saturn-Neptune alignment doesn't just bring conflict. The sources say it seems to redefine the collective belief system of its time.
That's the core thread running through it.
It's not just about winning a battle or changing a law. It's about shifting the very foundation of what a society believes to be true or right, or who holds legitimate authority.
The implications are just immense when you think about it that way. It signifies more than just a change in government or tweaking religious rules.
It's deeper.
Much deeper. It's like a fundamental reorientation of a society's moral compass, its understanding of justice, its definition of community, its vision for the future.
When we talk about collective belief systems, then it's not just religion.
No, the sources suggest it's much broader. It's the fundamental narratives, the core values, the basic assumptions a society holds true. That includes religious dogma, sure, but also scientific paradigms, political ideologies, social norms, even the unwritten rules of how we interact.
The invisible threads holding society together.
Exactly. And these conjunctions seem to coincide with periods where those threads get unraveled and then rewoven, often through intense disruption and conflict.
Like the collective unconscious undergoing a massive, probably painful transformation.
That's a good way to conceptualize it, yes.
Which inevitably brings us back to you, the listener. If these historical patterns are real, if they hold true, what belief systems do you see being challenged or redefined right now, today? Are we seeing shifts in how we view truth, authority, our collective responsibilities to each other? It's definitely a powerful lens, maybe a confronting one, to view current events through.
To recognize that we might actually be living through another one of these epical shifts ourselves.
And this is where the deep dive really pivots, doesn't it? From looking back at history to looking at something very real, very present.
The future, potentially.
Because, as our sources clearly state, Saturn and Neptune are about to meet again in Aries in 2026.
It's not some distant event, it's right around the corner.
Which makes all this historical pattern stuff feel suddenly very relevant, acutely relevant to our immediate future.
And it's not just any old conjunction either. The sources highlight its precision, its significance. It's set to occur right at the world axis, 0 degrees of the zodiac.
Okay, you've got to unpack that. World axis. What does that mean in this context?
Yeah.
And why is 0 degrees considered so powerful?
Good questions. So the world axis refers to these specific, highly sensitive points in the zodiac 0 degrees of the cardinal signs: Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Astrologically, these points are traditionally linked to global events, to shifts in the collective consciousness, to things that impact society on a grand scale.
So events happening there have wider ripples.
That's the idea. It's where universal energies are thought to be most palpable, most impactful on the world stage, influencing nations, populations, the general course of events.
And 0 degrees.
0 degrees of any sign is like the purest expression of that sign's energy, the absolute starting point. Think of it like a pristine canvas, full of potential but also raw, unrefined power.
Or untapped potential.
Exactly. For Aries, the sign of initiation, assertion, action. 0 degrees means those energies, new beginnings, courage, maybe confrontation, are expressed with maximum impact, often explosively. Unburdened by past baggage from the previous sign, it's a really potent, almost primordial start to a new cycle.
Okay, so it intensifies the things we've been talking about.
Considerably, yes. So you combine that historical pattern we've traced, Saturn Neptune. Belief clashes with power. With this upcoming alignment happening precisely at that highly sensitive 0 degrees Aries point on the world axis.
What does history suggest then?
Well, history strongly suggests we may be heading into another period where belief clashes with power.
Given how profound and often violent those past periods were, it's certainly a call for attention, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, understanding these patterns isn't about saying, oh, no, this is fated to happen.
It's not fatalism.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's about gaining insight into the nature of these deep societal shifts, which then raises that really important question: how can awareness actually prepare us?
Just being aware helps.
Awareness itself is a form of preparation, I think. It allows us to recognize the underlying dynamics that might be playing out, rather than just being swept along by events without understanding them.
Okay, so what might this clash look like this time? The sources are clear. It probably won't be a simple repeat of, Catholics versus Protestants.
History echoes. It doesn't usually repeat exactly.
Right. So what could a new round of ideological and religious identity conflicts look like in our modern 21st century world, given that shift we saw from religion to politics to economics?
Well, following that historical progression, you'd expect the conflicts now to manifest through the dominant belief systems and identity markers of our time. Still with that Aries assertion of identity, that fire.
So maybe intensifying debates around national identity, belonging, us versus them.
That seems very plausible. Or cultural values clashing over really fundamental moral principles. We could see perhaps clashes between secular viewpoints and various forms of religious fundamentalism becoming sharper.
Or political ideologies becoming even more polarized.
Exactly. More tribal, maybe. Rejecting common ground. The religious identity part might play out less as, say, Methodists versus Baptists, and more as identity politics, where groups define themselves fiercely by shared beliefs, values, cultural markers.
And then clash with others holding opposing views.
Asserting their worldview with that Aries fervor, yes. Think about the battles over historical narratives. Who gets to tell the story? Who defines truth? What does justice even mean in a society that feels fractured?
And critically, the sources explicitly mention this, includes the potential for conflict here in the United States.
Yes.
That brings it right home. It's
Right.
not just something happening somewhere else.
That's a crucial detail the sources point out. Given the intense polarization, the deep ideological divides we already see in the U.S., often framed as a battle for the nation's soul.
Yeah.
A Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries could certainly act as an amplifier for those existing tensions.
How might that manifest?
It could see the struggle between fundamentally different visions of America's identity, its core principles, its future direction, reaching a kind of fever pitch.
Battles fought where? In politics. Culture.
Vigorously in the political arena, certainly,
Hmm.
through cultural movements that shape public discourse, definitely, and, tragically, potentially even through more direct confrontation if things escalate, mirroring those historical patterns of ideological assertion when consensus breaks down.
So the Saturnian structures of government could come under intense pressure from these Neptunian ideals or disillusionments about national identity.
That's the dynamic, yes. Intense pressure demanding some kind of redefinition of what America collectively believes itself to be.
Which brings us right back to that really pressing question, posed directly in the source material. What can we do to not fan the flames?
The central question, really.
It feels like a question about conscious engagement, about responsibility. Can we actually learn from history? The sources seem to hint at strategies, right? Not just sitting back and watching.
No, definitely not passive observation. Active, constructive participation seems to be the implication.
So what does fanning the flames look like in this context? And what's the alternative?
Well, fanning the flames, that often involves demonizing anyone who disagrees, right? Refusing dialogue, entrenching ourselves in absolute certainty, believing our own Neptunian ideals are the only truth and everyone else is wrong or bad.
Closing ranks.
Exactly. So, not fanning the flames, the sources imply, involves the opposite. A commitment to seeking understanding, even across deep divides. Trying to foster empathy, even for viewpoints we find difficult or alien. Rigorously examining our own deeply held beliefs and biases with maybe some Saturnian discipline.
So critical thinking, stepping back from the immediate emotional reaction.
Critical thinking, yes. A willingness to try and transcend simplistic us versus them binaries. Engaging in constructive dialogue, especially when the world around us seems to be pulling towards tribalism and conflict.
It's about channeling that Aries energy differently.
Perhaps. Channeling it towards pioneering new solutions, maybe? Asserting a shared humanity rather than just focusing on destructive confrontation.
So what a journey. We started with this intriguing idea, celestial alignments influencing history. We dove deep into the explosive aftermath of 1522, Saturn Neptune in Aries, the Reformation Wars.
A pivotal case study.
Then we saw how that pattern seemed to evolve through the centuries. Monarchy versus revolution, capitalism versus communism. These huge ideological clashes.
Tracking the theme of redefinition.
Leading us right up to this critical point, looking ahead to 2026.
Right on our doorstep.
And the core insight, the takeaway from all these sources seems pretty clear, doesn't it?
I think so. That Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, especially in Aries, seem to mark these periods where humanity is really compelled to redefine its foundational beliefs and the structures of authority that go with them.
It's powerful, often disruptive, but ultimately maybe transformative, forcing this collective reevaluation of what we hold dear, how we organize ourselves.
Yeah, a profound shakeup.
And as we stand here now, on the cusp of another one of these potentially transformative conjunctions, that big question just hangs in the air, doesn't it?
It really does.
How do we respond, individually, collectively, to these intense periods of ideological, identity-driven conflict?
The history we've looked at strongly suggests that conscious engagement isn't just like a nice idea. It feels like a necessity if we want to navigate what's coming with any kind of wisdom.
Yeah, because if history shows these cycles do lead to a redefinition of our collective beliefs,
Which it seems to.
then what responsibility do we have in shaping what those new belief systems become?
And it may be just as important how they emerge. Will it be through more destructive conflict, just repeating the patterns of the past?
Or is there another way?
Or can we, maybe with this awareness, with concerted effort, try to guide this powerful evolutionary tide towards something more constructive, more unifying, perhaps?
Huge question.
Yeah.
Definitely something to mull over.
Absolutely. It's an invitation, really, to stay curious, keep thinking critically, and build on what we've explored in this deep dive.